Greetings! Welcome to Terra Prime Live. Dark Anonymous coming to you from Terra Prime headquarters. Joining me today here is one of our masters, Jared Nero, as you all know. Some other the guys are going to hopefully join us here, but I hear we're having some technical difficulties in the various areas. So it's just me and Jared here for right now, but I think we probably have enough to comment on here. Today we're talking about our advice as martial artists and duelists and people who like to use these things for athletic endeavors. Our advice to people who make the lightsabers, the saber smiths or saber makers, whatever you wish to call them. Because we have there's some certain things that we like about the lightsabers, and there's other things that we would like to improve of. Yeah. So we'll kind of go into there. Yeah. So I guess we'll just kind of get into it. I know there's lots of things that you and I would probably agree on as far as what we want in a hilt. What would be some of the first things that come to your mind as far as stuff that you're looking for?
It does partially come down to kind of personal preferences. So there's always that aspect that throws everything into a subjective territory. But in a sense, there's a lot of things that are pretty overall effective for most people. I tend to think of things that are hilts that are not overly adorned. It's kind of a middle of the road type thing where you don't want a bunch of stuff on the hilt because it gets in the way, it can cause you to grip it funny or whatever. Throws off the balance sometimes too. But at the same time, you don't want it overly plain because then you sometimes cannot get the greatest grip. Just examples offhand. I really like the Ultra Sabers Liberator, the current Liberator V3 or whatever, and the Dark Liberator. Really nice to hold, nice balance and everything, good size and everything like that. But it is a little bit slippery because it's kind of a simple hilt. It doesn't have a whole lot of versus something like, just for an example of something I really like to use, the Guardian, the Saberforge Guardian. And this is mostly due to the fact that the design itself, Qui-Gon Jinn's hilt, is just a bit more practical than something like some of the other sabers. Just as another example, Luke Skywalker's. It's ironic because I really love the original trilogy, but to be completely honest, every saber from the original trilogy kind of sucks to wield. So
yeah.
There's definitely some perks to the prequel hilts, like Qui-Gon's and some of the others. It has these ridges for nice good grip. It's a good kind of a good proportions and everything like that. A little bit on the heavy side in terms of other hilts, not very much so, but more than you'd expect. But I think that's just due to the design, and it actually balances out the blade quite nicely because they use fairly heavy blades. But that's definitely one thing in terms of design. You want the scale, something that's not overly large. Although length can be nice for more manipulation of the blade and everything like that. But all those things kind of balance out. So just get something sort of in the middle that hits all those, and you're good.
Yeah. Since we're coming from real swords and other types of weapons, and from my point of view, those handles, right? While you can't quite customize them like you can the lightsabers or anything like that, they often have more kind of ergonomic value. And there's a couple of qualities which I really like in a handle here. One of them is a wasting, but instead of a choke, it's a flare. Right? And I don't know how well you can see that there, but you see it kind of flares out right here. So you have two sections. This one's a little bit wider. Now, obviously, people put chokes on the sabers to kind of get a better smaller diameter and all of that kind of thing. I started using chokes for a while, then I just kind of stopped using them because they didn't. I don't know. They didn't give me too much of an advantage that I thought I would. Um, and so, that's one thing. I would like to see, more, some different shapes. That would be really cool. The Guardian, if you're talking about the Qui-Gon Jinn hilt, this one here, Guardian, Saber Forge, and then it's nice and slim. When I first got this, I loved this hilt. This was really, really comfortable. I liked it. As I've used it, some things have kind of fallen off to the wayside. It gets a little loose. It's gotten a little loose up here, so it clunks around and stuff. We can probably talk about this a little bit. These edges are a bit sharp, so sometimes you can catch them on your costume, catch them on your hand. They can be uncomfortable. The switch is very nice and recessed and everything like that. The other one that's kind of common out there is the Ultra Sabers consular, and that's this. The edges on the shroud are much smoother. That's one thing. But as you can see, and let me hold it up here, it's quite a bit larger. So it's kind of like one's like a little miniature side, and it doesn't have the bevel, this flat bevel here, which is one of the things I like about it, because that bevel gives you a non-cylindrical hilt, and a non-cylindrical hilt is very nice because, like the real swords, they're actually kind of oval, flattened ellipse kind of in there, so they're a little bit flattened, and so you can feel edge placement and get all of that kind of thing. Now, edge placement and all of that kind of thing does not relate to lightsabers. Get it? But as we get into some of the other types of weapons, edge alignment and flat and edge and all of that kind of thing are going to come into play. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, these two are pretty good. This is not a bad hilt. It's a little thick, as you see. I've got pretty big hands, right? This is a much slimmer, much nicer kind of feel, right? Like you said, it is a little bit hefty, but it's back weighted, so it's pretty nice. Yeah. So, and that's the other thing too. As few moving parts would be really, really advantageous, I think, right? Like if you have as few pieces in something, like my Gladius, I actually like, because it's just kind of one piece. All I've got to worry about is the wrap, the handle wrap. But because when we're kind of slamming them against each other, they'll often. Oh, yeah, Jared's got. Let me click that up there for the Gladius, as you can see there. Okay, and yeah, that's a great hilt. I really, really like that one because it's comfortable. There's nothing in the way. All of that. The one that I'm using right now a whole lot, which I've really kind of been surprised about, is the Saber Z. All right, and this kind of has it's almost perfect, but not quite. And there's a couple of things that bug me. Now, I've kind of switched over to the D rings because they're much more comfortable wielding with that offhand than the cover text. So I kind of prefer now the D ring to the cover tech knob. But that's whatever, personal choice. But that kind of gets into what we were talking about earlier, which is the as few greebies as possible, please. Little things that catch on your hand. And I tested a saber once here, and it was beautiful to look at, just all kinds of details and everything like that. It was impossible to use, to wield. It was just, wow. I couldn't hold on to. There was no place that my hand fit. It was sharp, you know, and things would fall off of it. So because, you know, I'm a little rough, even just in regular play. But this is a pretty slim design, and it's cylindrical still. So that's the one thing that is a little bit, you know, that leaves to be desired. But the buttons are nice and flush. The hilt itself is a good, you know, two-handed or one-handed kind of thing. A one-handed thing, since it balances kind of right in front of the emitter. For me, I like holding it right here, and it balances pretty good there. But you know, just because it's kind of plain, and I guess that's kind of where I'm going, is that, like you said, we don't want it necessarily boring, right? But it would be nice to. There are few sabers that seem to be ergonomically designed. That, you know, the wielding part of it doesn't seem to be in the thought process of the design, right? Up until now, and all of that. So hopefully we can, you know, we can start changing that to get, you know, cooler stuff. Throw it back over to you, Jared.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with all that. It is tough, you know, from the sabersmith point of view to kind of appeal to everyone. You know, you have people who want these over the top. I see these people all the time who love, and I don't get me wrong, I love this for its classic value, but like they love stuff like, you know, the Prodigal Son, you know, like this different versions of the Luke hilt. Not just, you know, the fact that this is actually the ironic thing about this to me is that, like, it's very, very accurate. It's got the nice thin neck. It's got, you know, the box and everything. There are a few tweaks that would make it like technically screen accurate or whatever. But to me, this is Luke Skywalker's hilt. But those things actually make it a little bit less practical to wield. You know, the thin neck actually is, like you were mentioning with the chokes, it doesn't do. I mean, someone like me, I kind of have big hands, so it's really more of a hindrance. Kind of makes it uncomfortable to wield, as opposed to something a little bit more uniform, like, you know, say this or the Gladius. You know, they have some ridges, but it's not anything extreme. But something having like two different extremes like this, but it's definitely what I consider more of kind of a mid-range. Like, I can go outside and screw around with it, but I'm not really gonna spar with it very much. And so yeah, like the sharp edges point is especially important, because these can really screw somebody up in a duel and everything like that. And plus, you know, even if you're wearing hand gear, you start ripping it up and whatever, you can hurt yourself. Actually, that's one, like, I think I had is it this one? Yeah, I think I was sparring with something, and I ended up putting a good ding into one of my sabers with like a sharp edge from another hilt. It's just scary to think about, like, what that could do. Actually, one of the ones on the note of one single piece, which is a very good one. This is the Saberforge Acolyte. Things like this are along the lines of kind of what I would consider a good direction to go in. Kind of simple stuff. You know, not too many threads. You know, the more parts you have, the more things are threaded, more things can unscrew, and the more things that can get stripped. Yeah, I've seen a bunch of times, like, things they get hit, somebody drops them, something like that, boom, like that. I've seen people unable to get their pommels off, which is really it seems like a rough deal, because then it's like, well, how do? You know, you just have to, and if you do get it off, then the threads are all, you know, torn to hell. So the less pieces you have, the less room for error there is. I haven't tested this extensively, but it's pretty new. I plan to, though. It is quite nice. It's like I said, it's slim. It's got this choke, which isn't very extreme, so it's not gonna get in my way or you know, cause an odd grip. It's just enough to kind of give me a little bit of texture there to grab. You know, there's some some detail here and some here. You know, it's relatively short, which I like as kind of a single hander. I like to have a bit of a short hilt so there's not a whole lot out there. You know, just the length for mostly single-handed work. The length doesn't. I don't find it to benefit me as much because it just doesn't. You know, it can add weight, but mostly it adds room to grip. You know, which is more beneficial if you're using a two-handed approach and you kind of can generate that power. But yeah, like we were mentioning before, the only downside I can think of really with this hilt, sharp edges. This one's not as extreme as some. It's pretty much just here around the emitter where they have these very, very precise machined lines. But I do actually plan on filing these down because I don't want to get into a sparring match and then really gouge somebody. You know, maybe if I were trying to actually kill a Sith or something like that, it might be nice to have an extra weapon. But considering I spar with my friends, I don't like to cause them to bleed usually. So that's pretty much the idea with me. I have the other one that I really like. I'm sure everybody knows this by now. The Ultra Sabers Dark Prophecy. Similar idea actually. I find these sabers to be rather not maybe not similar exactly, not exactly the same, but like in general concept, I find them trying to get them both in the frame to be kind of similar size. Both pretty like one piece, not overly complicated. A little bit of, like that one, it has a little bit of a wasted period here and stuff like that. It's just enough to give it some grip. You know, you can grip it. It's lightweight. It's actually pretty well balanced depending on what blades in it. It's a little light for some of the heavier blades, but you can change the pommel. It's MHS compatible, which is nice. So you could do whatever you want. I've seen people change the pommel just to add a little bit of length to it. But again, straightforward. Nothing to get in the way. This one doesn't.
Yeah.
Just simple. Simple is good.
Yes, keeping things as simple as possible is great. As few pieces as possible, so that there's less to fail. Awesome. We're always looking to, to kind of ruggedize everything like that. So the three-piece construction seems to be okay. This hilt is kind of interesting. We can get into this, which is actually very interesting here. But the Bane, the Ultra Saber Bane here. Now it's a nice hilt. It's really it's even though it's big and thick, it kind of fits its profile and its length. It's very long. It's got this kind of pseudo guard up here. It's a very nice hilt. The problem is that it comes apart here, so that this comes here and it doesn't really screw in. This kind of screws in like that, and you either use a retention screw or whatever. Problem is that when you start banging around a little bit, these screws start to work their way out, and then this thing gets loose. It doesn't get loose enough to come out or anything like that, but you constantly have to keep tightening it, and everything. So that's kind of a good example. Now, generally speaking, I think having that retention screw on the pommel makes more sense and is more successful from what I've seen in certain things. But hey, I don't think that's a big deal. But as far as other features that are really kind of important, I would say, to us who like to bang them around a lot, is build them to access them. One of the things I really like about this is it's going to be busted around and thrown around and everything like that, and things can break and they just come disconnected. And as long as you can kind of access this, and on these you can take out these nuts and then remove this whole plate, and then you have access to all of that. this I don't know if they do this standard, but Nick did this for me at Sabers. The put quick disconnects on all of the switches here, so that if any of that stuff happens, I just plug it right back in. I did it once, but you just take it apart. It's as easy as anything there is out there. So I know that these things are going to be banged around, and I've been dueling with this for since I got it. So, and it's definitely held up. I know you played with it a little bit when I was in New York, but
Yeah, that was an interesting opportunity because I thought they were cool before, and I was like, all right, the color change feature, everything like that, that's nice, but it's one of those things that I don't know. Hilts, until you hold it in your hands, you never know if you're going to like it or not.
yeah,
Some hilts I go, that's a really cool hilt. I'd love to get that. And I get it, and I go, and others, and I'm like, others I'm like, well, sure, I'll give this a try, and then I just fall in love with it, and it's one of those things. That one in particular, I held, and it's just kind of perfect. The weighting, the size, the ergonomics, everything about it. I'm a big fan. I'm definitely going to have to get one of those eventually.
yeah, yeah. The thing that kind of made me hold off on it is they are at a little bit higher price point, for being so modular and everything like that. However, I really can't complain about the product at all. I'm going to do a full review on this guy pretty soon, because I've been using it a lot. Now, the interesting thing is it was sort of a canon thing, because as you see, it's got the Phantom Menace Obi-Wan thingamajigger here, which I love, but I replaced the spiky pommel here because unlike the Qui-Gon Jinn hilt design, the Obi-Wan design is all great up to here until it gets to that weird mace-like pommel, which is unbelievably uncomfortable to wield like there. It was just,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I've seen a bunch of different versions of it, and it doesn't work.
once again, it's one of those things where the more popular the feature is, the less practical it is.
Right.
It's like everybody it's just a community thing because you want that. They're cool. They're cool visuals. The Obi-Wan pommel, so it looks cool. It's unique. And everybody likes that. Everybody's all over the Obi-Wan pommel, but it's really not that comfortable to use. It's like the same thing with the thin neck, all the accuracy and stuff, all those greeblies, like it's just not comfortable. So it's one of those things. Cool that you can customize it.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not, and we're not commenting on the art piece sabers. The costume pieces, just the props, as people call them, belt hangers or wall hangers, that kind of thing, that people are putting together to be in Rebel Legion and 501st and stuff like that, because they need big cannon hilts and all that stuff. That's great, and there are some just, beautiful, amazing pieces out there. A lot of these amazing pieces that look so wonderful would be just absolute hell to try to use and try to move around with. It's just that I've seen things with like fins on them, and yeah, okay, people are saying, oh well, you could put your finger in there. It's like, oh, I don't know, having a bar or something like that kind of catching your finger does not sound like it would be awesome. Um, Again, we're used to stuff that has little to nothing on it. They'll put some wire and stuff underneath the leather for a little bit of grip. But on the other hand, like the Chinese swords, I think I got one right here, they haven't got nothing on them. It's just wood. It's just smooth wood, just like that. All right. And this doesn't have much of a guard, so this is analogous kind of more to the lightsaber stuff. So, and we can talk about that. We're used to stuff that has little to nothing on it. Oh, hello. Some wire and stuff underneath the leather for a little bit of grip.
But on the other hand, like
yeah, so we're getting the
right here, we got nothing on them. It's just wood. It's just smooth wood, just like that.
We had an echo in case anyone missed the last 10 seconds of the show. It was just a recap.
Okay, now, right on. Can we get the mutes and all of that kind of thing going? Okay, joining us hopefully is Kyle Miller, a saber maker to listen in and give some stuff here. So we'll just kind of keep talking, let him figure that stuff out, and join here in a moment. Anyway, so what I was saying, what I was going to transition to is guard, right? Everybody's talking about the cross guard saber, and Ultra Sabers has got cross guard saber coming out, which would be, I'll try it, we'll see. But there is an argument to be made for some manner of guard, and like I said, I use this one. I have another saber which has a similar type of round guard on it, and you don't need that much to get even just a little bit of protection, a little bit of catch when somebody slides down there, and really like that. This, I have a smaller diameter blade in it, so it gives a little bit of catch, but obviously nothing like that. Okay, it's not that. I mean, I've used the Ascend. The Ascend's a good dueling hilt. The one problem with the Ascend, for those who haven't seen the review for that, is this switch, right? You will turn off your saber all the time, just kind of wheeling around. Click! Oh, there it goes. So.
Yeah, I would say that's one that I also quite like. That's another one that I didn't know I liked until I actually held it in hand and got it from somebody out of curiosity. Very comfortable, but like you said, it's got a couple. I mean, I would say if they're like, it has an Achilles heel, I guess it would be that switch, which is just so damn easy to turn off.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe also the fact that it's a little bit up on the price end in terms of comparatively to some other stuff,
right.
Especially for like the stunt, just because a lot of hilts are down closer to 100, 150, something like that, and the Ascends are 200, I believe, for a stunt.
Right. And but the Ascends now, I believe, come with the PS2, the Crystal Shard 2.
Yeah, they do come with. I don't know if he's up to the 2.5 yet. He will probably be shortly because I know a couple of companies are doing that already. Vader's Vault. I ordered one with a 2.5, right. And that has so many features that it starts to definitely justify the for the sound equipped version. I think it definitely justifies it. Which I think, I'm not sure, I think it's around 500 or something like that, which is pretty reasonable considering other similar hilts with color change, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's yeah, and I actually really like that sound card because you don't, and just mention this real quick, as I know Kyle will like this, but this does not require a kill key just to turn off. It has a deep sleep mode. If you keep it off, it just shuts off, right? So it's single button activation. And this has been sitting for like a month and a half. But anyway, the kill keys are getting really annoying with me because these things they pop out, and then I can't turn the damn thing off. It just sits there and flashes, haunting me, right? Until I get home and I can plug it in or something like that. But that kind of goes under the category as few moving separate pieces as possible, please, for dueling type hilts, because we kind of throw them. We don't necessarily treat them with a whole lot of reverence. We kind of toss them around here and there, all that kind of thing. But but yeah, so yeah, I do know that the price point on both the Saber Z and the Ascend are a little bit on the high side, which is another thing that is for martial artists is a little bit, you know, we understand about price and everything like that and that's why we're kind of a little persnickety about it, because we spend a lot of money on martial arts equipment, from like swords to protective equipment, to, lessons and classes, or if we're running a school, we've got all those expenses and stuff like that. So yeah, we're looking for economical solutions to a lot of these things, especially to start out with, and especially if we're intending to go into sparring and practice with something. We don't want to sink a whole lot of money into it, because we're absolutely sure it will fail at some point. We will destroy it at some point. I mean, the best practice sword that you can get, only has a certain amount of life in it. We understand that, right? But they're really expensive. I mean, you're talking $400, $500 a lot of times for those things. So, so it gets like that. I mean, granted, these are really tough. I have had zero problems with any of them. I've been using the Ultra Sabers for, God, now it's going on 4 years. We're going to the 4th year of camp, and in fact, I just used my very first Ultra Saber again yesterday against somebody. Yep. Still turned on, everything like that. I wish I had that one. That one is beat to hell. I mean, it looks like I threw it into a wood chipper. I mean, it's so scarred up and nasty. But yes. Okay. So, I don't know. Kyle. Aha, Jeff. Jeff is coming in here. We'll let him come in here. And Kyle, so you've probably been listening here. Any thoughts about or what we've been talking about?
Well, I think the first thing I'm going to do is avoid the kill key discussion. You and I already had that one out on Facebook for a while. The only thing I will say, Chad, is that I have had this saber and this kill key for 3 years, and I have never lost this kill key, and I've carried this saber to hell and back. But that being said, I don't take them out and beat the snot out of them in a field somewhere either. So most likely I would lose it in the grocery store, not in the middle of the woods. I completely agree with you guys with regards to fewer greeblies, and that I guess from a practical standpoint, I've always said that I felt that sabers should be treated more like a weapon. Like you said, when you're looking at a steel sword, the handle is very simple. You don't have extra little bits and bobs sticking out of the thing all over the place for a reason. You don't want them in your way while you're trying to maneuver this, and your very life could depend on getting your finger snagged on something that doesn't need to be there. However, yeah, the custom saber market, people always want the more bling they can get. Let's put all kinds of little dials and knobs that make it look like they do something and make it as fancy as possible. But once in a while, I still get somebody who just wants something really simple, really streamlined, really plain, nothing in the way, nothing's gonna snag on anything. So it all depends on the user, right? So many people, if they're how do I put it? If they're like you guys that are going to go out and they're going to be smacking these around with each other, and they don't want the extra pieces because it's just another piece to get knocked off of it, and then have to get it repaired, right? So why would you want to have to keep worrying about whether your saber gets damaged or not? Personally, I like plain hilts too. My own saber has virtually nothing on it. There's no extra. It's got a cover tech. The buttons are recessed, so they're out of the way. There's nothing extra to this. Pat at Industrial Action built this, so I can't claim responsibility for that one. But that's one of the reasons I love it so much, is it's just a very streamlined, simple hilt.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Jeff, finally got your stuff working. Why don't we let you chime in with some of your thoughts here before we kind of continue and open it up?
Yeah, no worries. Sorry about that, technical difficulties. Having not really heard what anybody else has said yet, I kind of have a feeling that I know what you guys have already been talking about. It's probably the same stuff I talk about. Yeah, anything that's hanging off of it that's not like a real weapon is something that I look at some of the sabers. They're beautiful sabers, but I look at it and go, man, that would hurt to swing it, or that would hurt to grab it, or it'd be really cool hanging from a belt. But the thing that I'd like to see a lot more of is and it's kind of why Ultra Sabers kind of caught my attention at first, because they all work with the custom saber shop parts. So you can make this thing as modular as you want. You can balance it to a different point. You can, create a long-handled saber versus a short-handled saber, or whatever you want to do. So that's something I love to see on any sabers, which, I've found out some of the companies aren't compatible, so I kind of shy away from those just for that reason. But yeah, the modularity is a big thing, and I think I've talked with you, Chad, before about anything on a saber that will in some way give it blade direction is something I love. So if you have something on there that'll give you some idea of which way the blade is, it makes it feel more like a weapon, as opposed to feeling like a round tube that you have no, I know lightsabers are omnidirectional, but if we're going to use things appropriately, you've got to line the bones up in your arm behind the strike, otherwise it's not going to work as well.
Oh yeah, and that's why I kind of have, when people say, oh yes, well you can do things with the lightsaber you wouldn't be able to do with the regular sword. It's like, sort of, but a sword was kind of designed around what we can do, not us kind of around what it can do. So it's designed to be, even even with an omnidirectional, even with a stick, we're going to make the same motions and lining up everything here. I'm not going to hold it like this and try to hit you with it. It would be ridiculous. But yeah, like definitely to get some sort of edge dynamic. Now I know that becomes a little bit more difficult. However, as I've been looking into a lot of other different electronic stuff like that, and who knows where technology is going to go. Everything's getting so tiny now. A friend of mine works in manufacturing, and he does high res scanning for industry and stuff like that, with a crazy precision. And he gets stuff. I asked him, I said, well, how small can we get stuff to put in this? He said, we can get it so small it can fit in a dime if you want. They have stuff out there that is so ridiculous. And, obviously, the more advanced, the more expensive, the less, it becomes cost prohibitive and stuff like that. So as things in electronics and all this stuff start to go, one of my students is working on an Arduino, getting prototypes made of this kind of stuff. So we don't know where all of this stuff is going to go. But I think one thing that we didn't mention before that you did, Jeff, which is good, is the modularity. Being able to change it and mix and match it. Now, the Saber Z is like I said, they are a little bit on the higher price point and everything like that, but they are modular with all of their parts, and they've put out all of the specs and stuff like that. So you can make, if you have the materials and the time and all that kind of stuff, make stuff for your own saber, which is really cool. I do like that. I'm not trying to necessarily talk this up, but the modularity, like the MHS system, I've been a big fan of since I started. Just like you, Jeff, I got in with the Ultra Sabers, because you can get a hilt with Ultra Sabers, which has all the electronics and everything like that for a little bit cheaper price, and then mod it to your exact specifications. So, so the modular thing is definitely a good thing, and I would like to see more in that respect. And then, here's where we can throw it up to you here, Kyle. I would like to see more cooperation and more cross-pollination between saber makers and stuff like that, so that there can become, kind of more of a vibrant system. Like if you go to like Penguicons and all this stuff, there's other places that this is there, that these kinds of communities of makers and stuff like that happen. And I know that there are those tend, I think that the tighter communities tend to be the custom prop makers who are making the really high expensive pieces that even if I were to buy one of those, which I may in someday, I would never fight with it. I mean, that thing would be a piece of art. It would not be for banging. I will take the mag light with the blade sticking out of it to whack around with. Then cut. Give me the camera saber, and then there we go. But anyway, so yeah, so I think that's one thing that I would like to see, in the whole industry is more, like, I don't know, more general kind of invention where things are kind of getting invented to go out to everybody rather than, all this. And I know it's a young burgeoning thing, but thoughts on that, Kyle?
Well, one of the biggest things, first off, is I know that a lot of guys want to work together, and there have been a few collaborations even just over the last few months, where it seems like more and more people are trying to work together on projects and bring out a product that one guy's a little more specialized in than the other, and kind of feed off of each other that way to bring out something better. The problem we run into a lot of times, though, is that it's also become extremely competitive. And something we've been running into over the last month or two is a lot of people sniping designs. Someone spends a long time putting together a design, doing all the CAD work and machine work and things like that, and someone else buys it up, turns it into their own and produces it and sells it and claims, that, hey, I came up with this, not that guy. Which happens in every industry, right? I mean, car guys do it, computer guys do it. It's nothing new.
Oh, right, yeah.
But it's just becoming, seems to be more and more prevalent lately, and especially in the market where people are trying to make sabers that are more affordable for duelists and for the general populace than just the customs. The customs, you don't see it as much. It seems almost like people protect that property a little more or have a little more respect for that property, don't seem to jump on that bandwagon. But when it comes to the more regularly produced items, it's almost like they figure, well, he's doing that for this much money, why can't I do it too? So they'll snag the idea and run with it, and then it becomes a game. Who can come up with more sabers for a cheaper price and sell them to more people for less money. And unfortunately, some people actually take a certain amount of perverse pleasure out of stealing the business from somebody else too. I'm lucky that way. I don't mass produce, so I don't really run into that problem, and I don't have to worry about protecting my intellectual property all that much. But I know that the saber manufacturers tend to drop into camps. You wind up with small groups of people over here or over there, and then for some reason or another, even on the slightest disagreement of, be it electronics or, groups that they're part of or whatever, they'll find these little things that they just decide they can't talk to each other anymore because of that. Which was really petty and unfortunate, because I'd like to see a larger community coming together to put these things together as well. I've tried over the last couple of years to try and get some of these groups to kind of, put aside those differences and work together on this stuff and create a larger community instead of smaller, broken up communities. And hopefully we can do that. But so far, it just seems that the competition factor gets in the way. And that's why we don't end up with a larger modular system where multiple people's products are interchangeable with one another.
Well, I think one of the problems is, here, if in martial arts, like we have a good example is the synthetic sparring swords by Rawlings, right? Now these are kind of modular type, types of things. So you can take the blade off, and you can take the handle off, and put a new pommel on, and do all this other stuff, and kind of switch the fittings around on this on the sparring sword. Huge, big thing. Now, right after that, a bunch of people just immediately started making blades and pommels and fittings and stuff like that that fit in that system. And Rawlings kind of sent that information out. It wasn't a secret or anything like that, because their business, of course, went up because more people are getting their kits, and it's spreading around. And so you have people who kind of do specialize. These guys make just fittings. Like so, I get a synthetic longsword, so it's got plastic fittings all over there. And then I go over to Purple Heart Armory, right, which you can go. I'll put the link here in the thing here, and they have steel. They're the exact same specifications, but they're made of steel, right? They also have different designs of pommels and guards and stuff like that you can use with these. Other handles and different wraps and that kind of thing. It's not as you can't completely mix and match everything like that, but there is a lot of that thing. So you can make a handle longer, right? You can put a different pommel on a sword, which is something that's been really huge I think in HEMA community, because it allows people to get into the sport and into martial art, a little bit more, economical way. And you can start with the basics kit, and then add to it, sprucing it up as you go along. That's really difficult to do with lightsabers, because, unless you're going MHS, but then when you're going MHS, you're kind of stuck with this very large diameter. So now I know they have the MHS too, but I don't know that they're letting people, use it freely, or make things that are compatible with it.
Technically, the MHS equipment was never given to be used freely.
Right.
And
that.
The people at TCSS that developed the system claim it as their intellectual property. There is a constant debate going on over that and whether or not it can actually be claimed as intellectual property or not, given that really it's just pipe threading. Mm-hmm. And it's a common pipe threading size. It's used in many machine shops all over, so it's not really a proprietary kind of thing.
Right, and I measured the thread at my local hardware store.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not hard to come by, and really, quite frankly, the MHS V2, you could do the same thing. Just check the threading and find something that threads it, that fits it. Whether you'll see that come from, for instance, Ultra Sabers, who are known for having the most compatible pieces with the MHS system, or not, I don't know. I would imagine you probably will as you see more and more of the MHS V2 stuff popping up. But I also know that development on that's been a little slow. We haven't seen a huge surge of new pieces available for it as of yet. So far, most of the parts are fairly generic and very plain. They haven't really gotten into the detailed stuff yet. And I don't know what Tim plans for that either. I really have no idea. I'm sure he does have grand plans for it, but it took a long time for the original MHS system to come up with as many parts as they have too. So I guess it'll just kind of be a waiting game. But I do know that with Sabers getting more and more into the smaller diameters, even when you were talking about your Guardian, and the comparison between the Ultra Sabers and the Saber Forge, people are leaning further into that direction of those more narrow hilts, easier to hold on to, a lot easier for dueling with. You kind of don't feel like you're holding onto a club. Even my own saber feels, if it wasn't for the way it's designed, it would feel large to me. But it just happens to have a good grip section in the middle. And when I grab it up here, I can definitely feel the larger diameter on the gear section. But down here where my hand naturally rests, it's not so bad. I don't have very big hands. I have kind of stubby fingers. I'm not a piano player. But it works out. I would like to see something in a bit smaller diameter, and that's why I actually like my Ascend so much, because it's a little bit smaller and easier to maneuver with. And I know that was one of the big things Mad Cow shot for when he came up with that design, was to make it more dueler friendly. But yeah, that's especially with the smaller soundboards. It's something we're definitely seeing. Everybody's shrinking things down. They're becoming like cell phones. We're trying to make them as small as we can.
Well, right, yeah, yeah. And I know, I mean, we were just, I mean, if you go onto the, has anybody played with the Arduino?
I've looked at them a bit. I haven't actually used one.
Yeah, check out the Arduino Nano. It's like, what is going to happen now? And then 3D printing. I know people are already starting to 3D print stuff out there. Mm-hmm. So, at some point, the selling point to a lot of people, I think, is going to be, can I do stuff to it? People don't. I'm speaking for myself. I'm speaking, I think, for our panel here, because we've talked about it before, that we get hilts, we like them, but there's always one or two things that we might want to tweak or change just a little bit, So, we're not being overly critical. We love the lightsabers, of course, obviously. You can see how many we have, right? But we wanted to maybe give some direction for at least a sort of sizable market, a market that exists at least for people. And believe me, if you make a pretty durable one, right, that needs few repairs, it doesn't need to last forever. It won't last forever, but if it lasts for like 5 years before it goes, I'll buy another one. That's what we're always looking for. We're looking for the thing that's going there. Believe me, once we find something we like, we tend to just kind of go for that because it's steady and it's solid. We're all about we don't want this thing to fail us when when we're out there.
Yeah, I've actually got a design in the works right now that I'm hoping to go into production with shortly. And one of the biggest things was to keep it as few pieces to the actual hilt itself as possible. Basically your main body and your main emitter are one piece, and then your pommel is removable, but it's on a longer sleeve, so it sits in further. It's not going to rattle around and not going to be just a single set screw kind of holding this little thing in that's going to slip loose on you. Because I want it to be able to something that people can really beat the crap out of and not have to worry about. And if the internals, I've said it before, if the internals are done right, if you've got the right style chassis pieces in them, you should be able to take it out and really just go crazy with them and not have to worry, as long as everything's secured properly inside. And hopefully it does last, 5 years, 10 years like you want it to.
Yeah. But see, here's the thing. I just know this from life, right? Every little piece in there, it's like, it doesn't matter how well it's wired, how well all the chassis is. You didn't make the speaker. Those things can also go, and I've had that happen to me. Not even dueling, going around, and all of a sudden, the speaker goes. Like, are you kidding me?
I got collections of them stuck to my workbench right now.
Yeah.
Thing.
Exactly. So we're dealing with components which are inherently fragile, I think. So anyway, gentlemen, anything to wrap up here?
Well, I just want to point one thing out. I got to get running anyway. I'm already running late, but just one aspect that especially applies to Darth Anonymous and in general, hopefully the future of this community, is that we're looking into more and more options and seeing more things out there for clubs and groups, and you have all these groups, these performance groups, and now TPLA and some of that kind of stuff, and even with other things that I've seen, it's looking like we're moving towards the point where people are going to be training, signing up for classes, this and that. Chad has the saber class, and that's great. It's getting the kids into it and everything like that. It's really cool to be able to further that, and that's one of the big things that I think is going to really demand that level of design, attentiveness to design and practicality and that kind of thing. in these, because something like, I know if I were going to open a saber school here, or something like that, and I say, oh, I have 10 kids sign up, so whatever, I would like to have a couple options for just simple stuff, Ultra Sabers type stuff that's customizable, simple, not gonna, whatever. But it would be nice to be able to mix it up, to have different things, maybe even give different options. So something like, the Ascend is like a really nice option, like we said, with few tweaks, maybe a slight change in button configuration, but like something like that that's simple. It's not, it's a little customizable, which is nice, but it's not overly, it would just be something that's nice for, if I had unlimited funds or whatever like that, and I just opened up a school, I would be like, oh, okay, I'll just get 10 Ascends and 10, Ultra Sabers, whatever, like something like that, like Dominic's or whatever, and just kind of get a little bit here, a little bit there, and kind of have different options for that. And I think that's going to be something, that low cost, simple, doesn't have to be overly complicated, doesn't have to have really, really high, we get pretty fussy with our LED tech, because we're dorks like that. We love to have, like, oh, this thing has such and such, this, that, and the other, which is great. It's great for the higher end stuff that we'd like to enjoy, but it's good to have both options out there, and something low cost that kind of just lights up, it's bright, it's nice, it won't fall apart. I think that's will be important in the future when we start looking more and more into these ideas of clubs and classes and all that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to kind of upgrade them, as you go. So I can get it as a stunt and upgrade it to a sound. Jeff, anything to add here at the end?
Sure, and again, all this with the caveat of I missed like the first half of this, so I'm not sure if any of this has already been said. But something I think would be really cool, just a little extra thing. I know a lot of the companies that put the Sabers out, they put like that. There's the initiates with Ultra Sabers, and I know Saber Forge has different tiers. So most of the stunt sabers are the low end sabers, the ones that don't make a lot of sound. They just kind of have a bunch of stuff rattling around them. Because these things are made to have a bunch of stuff shoved in there, when you leave some of that stuff out, it leaves a lot of room. And I've had one or two of mine fail on me because they've rattled around so much in there. I think it'd be really neat to have the option to, maybe make it an upgrade option. I don't know, just to be able to put those parts into a chassis inside of the stunt saber so that it doesn't bang around as much. I don't know if there's any companies that are doing that right now, but that would be really neat, at least something I'd like to see. Because I've tried to find some stuff on TCSS, the Custom Saber Shop site, and figure it out, but I got no clue what I'm looking at and what chassis I need for what parts because I don't know much about it. So I think that'd be something cool that would be a really neat option for some of the other sabersmiths to put out there. Is maybe putting some, and especially with the 3D printing coming out now, you can just kind of 3D print stuff. So I think it'd be really neat if people were offering that as an option.
Yeah, I know a couple of my sabers, and this is where we're talking about the components right here. Is I broke a couple of my sabers at the school, the battery pack, because I'm trying to get the battery pack out, and it goes whoop, whoop, it pops right off. I'm like, oh man, But I can't reach in there, and it's in there so tight. Kind of have to.
One of the things I did after I broke my first saber pack, or the battery pack on my first saber, from doing the same exact thing, what I did is I tied a little wire to one of the parts at the bottom. So I just would reach up in there, grab the wire, and then pull it back out. But yeah, it's still, every time you're practicing, you're hearing it rattle around in there. That's not good. It's, what are you going to do?
Right. Well, what I usually do as a fix is I usually stuff a bunch of rubber bands in there or something like that. Just to keep it from rattling around or moving too much. But that's what we martial arts do, right? Martial arts do. We're always jerry-rigging stuff.
Yeah, we do too. We just don't tell anybody. No, yeah, actually, the battery pack issue is a big one. I've run into that a lot, and a lot of guys, who no matter which company makes a saber, when they have those removable packs, they slide them out the bottom of the thing. You're constantly snapping off an LED wire or a battery wire or a switch wire or something like that. And what I've started doing is making tethers on all of my battery packs. So now you've got your harness that has all your actual important components, but you've got a separate piece that comes off of that, and it goes up inside the Saber, and it ties off to something else.
Oh, nice.
You pull on that as much as you want. It's not going to break this, but when you make this, you make sure that it's shorter than your wiring harness, so that it stops before there's any pressure on your actual wires, and that keeps you from having to worry about that snapping off. I've had to rewire a few initiates and that sort of thing of that nature with that issue, so I've kind of started doing that as a standard. Also, like you were talking about with making sure that things don't rattle around inside, I agree. There's no particular reason why, just because it doesn't have sound, that it should just have empty space. Because with the kind of things we have with 3D printing and that sort of thing, there's no reason we can't be putting in a spacer of some sort to take up that extra gap where the soundboard would normally be, or where a speaker would normally be, and just make it as a blank chassis that has no parts in it, and just mount your battery pack to that, and you're all set.
Yep. If somebody could do that, I'd buy it in an instant. I promise.
I will remember you said that.
Yeah. This is the thing. This is stuff that would be great to be standard on everything, because these are features that we really want. They seem simple, right? But losing stuff off of your weapon, so annoying. It's dropping off your belt. It's constantly dropping over here because even when we're just wearing it, we're not like walking around. We tend to do lots of stuff, pop off and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, as few pieces as possible. But inside, if it rattles around, if it moves, it's gonna fail. That's just the thing.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? That's actually why I joined you guys today. Is to be able to hear feedback from you specifically on what not only the masters are looking for, but what the students are looking for. The problems that they come across during these classes, the things that you guys have to deal with day to day, that a lot of times in the design end of things we don't hear, we don't know.
Yeah, we didn't have any of the students with us today. I don't know where they were today, but oh well.
I got enough of them on my Facebook. I'll probably hear from them later, but
yeah, right.
It's one of those things that I would happily hear any suggestions for anything that makes it more functional for you guys, and that makes the product something that you guys want to own, that you guys want to have, and want to use daily. Because those little design changes are made to make the customer happy. So if we don't know necessarily what the customer is looking for, we won't make the change. Right? It's all about just, I guess, being open to what the market's asking for.
Yep, absolutely. And that's kind of what we were doing here today. So hopefully that will be, at least some information for some of the other saber makers out there, that there are people that are kind of looking for that. We hope there's going to be more people kind of looking for that kind of stuff. And the other thing I just want to mention real quick here at the end, we're 5 minutes over, but the other thing you have to remember, Sabersmith guys, we use padded gloves, right? So if there's stuff hanging off of that, that ain't going to work. We usually tear it right off because our hands are a little bit bigger. So that's one of those things that the person who's holding it isn't necessarily going to be holding it with their bare hand, right? And even in costumes, people will be doing that kind of stuff. So, anyway, we are a little bit over, but that's okay. It was a good conversation. I think it's good information. We don't want to start repeating ourselves here, but I think we got most of the things out. Modularity, very big. It's simple, nice, simple, elegant designs. Easily accessed for customization and repair, and affordability or scalability. These, I think, 4 things is a pretty good summation of kind of what we're looking for. And of course, the little ideas like the tether on the battery thing. Oh, great idea. any saber makers out there making sabers and watching this, if you're not putting those in now, you should be. You now know. Okay. So, anyway, so let me thank Jeff and Kyle for joining us here on the panel, and Nero, Jared, who had to take off. Thank you for joining us here on this Sunday evening, and have a great time. We'll be back next month with another live special. I don't know exactly when that will be, but stay tuned for that. And you should be seeing some more of us, as we're going to be making some announcements and some more material coming out. So stay tuned for all of that, Saberites, and we will see you next time. Until then, have a good week. Happy sabering, and may the force be with you.